thing I want to ask you about specifically is teacher and school leader quality. So I know you can probably all speak to the fact that having a high quality teachers and school leaders can have a huge impact on your success. You know, in classes where you have great teachers, you often do really well because they help you be excited and be passionate about that subject. So I want to ask you about a couple of different ideas that have been suggested to help ensure that all teachers and school leaders, so principals, superintendents, are of high quality. And I want to get your thoughts on these things, whether you think they'd actually have a good impact on student success or not. So the three things I want to ask you about are on pages 7, 8, and 9 of your issue guide, which I'll grab a couple extras for those of you who don't have them. No, I won't because they're in my car. So if you don't mind sharing, I would really appreciate that. But I will do a quick highlight for you of each of these issues for you. So the first thing I want to ask you about is improving teacher preparation. So some have suggested that it would be important for us to make it more difficult for those who are in college studying to become a teacher, to make it more difficult for them to enter education programs and complete them. So making the teacher education programs at the college level more difficult, and also making it more difficult to become state certified as a teacher. So there's an exam that teachers have to take to become state certified. Some have suggested that we need to make that more difficult. So second, providing stronger support for educators. So obviously support can mean a lot of things. The things I want to ask you about specifically, some of the things that have been suggested by education policy experts are that we should have more mentoring programs for those who are new teachers, from those who have been in the classroom for longer. Also that we need to have ongoing in-depth professional development for educators. So not only once the knowledge doesn't end after they become a teacher, that they continue to have training throughout their career to help them improve and learn new techniques. So that's another thing I want to ask you about. And then third, holding educators more accountable. So some have suggested that to make educators more accountable for student success, that we need to look at the tenure system and reform it so that tenure system is a system that rewards educators for longevity in the career. So the number of years they've been in the field, they're rewarded for that. And some people have suggested that we need to relook at that system, and as well as potentially linking pay or teacher or educator benefits to student performance. So if students do well, teachers get paid more. If they don't do well, they get paid less. So those are the three things I want to ask you about, as well as look for any additional ideas that you have. So I'm going to first ask you the questions about these three things with your clickers, and then open it up for some discussion. So my first question for you. In terms of improving student learning outcomes, how important do you think it is to improve teacher preparation for entry into education professions? So this would be making the teacher education programs at the college level more difficult, making it more difficult to pass the state certification exam. So you got 5 options here. 1's irrelevant, 2, not very important, 3, somewhat important, 4, important, or 5, crucial. Let's see how you voted. So 60% of you said important. It would be, so this is generally pretty important to the group. 23% of you said somewhat important, 10% said crucial. We do have 8% that said either not very important or irrelevant. So most of the group says at least somewhat important, with a few saying not as much. Second question, in terms of improving student learning outcomes, how important is it to provide stronger support for educators? So here, half of you said this is important. All but 12% of you said at least somewhat important, but we again do have 10% that say not very important, 2% that say irrelevant. And then 3, in terms of improving student learning outcomes, how important is it to hold educators more accountable? So that would be things like tenure, linking pay to performance. So here the most popular options were 34% of you said this is crucial, another 34% said somewhat important, 22% of you said important, 5% said not very important, 5% said irrelevant. So again, most of the group says pretty important. So let's talk about this a little bit. Any of these three options, did any of them stand out to you as either really positive or maybe something that wouldn't have, that's more negative that you wouldn't like to see implemented? What do you think about these three things? Yeah.
I felt like that it doesn't necessarily need to be harder to get into the program, but more that you need to have more once you're in, like more support. So the second question, because like to make it harder to go into teaching, you're ruling out anybody that wants to be a teacher but can't necessarily maybe get a master's degree before they can start working. Maybe they don't have the money to pay for that degree before they can start being a teacher or something. But if you have a stronger like support and teaching and mentoring once they have their education, then you're making it so that they're better teachers because they're having teachers come in and help them through teaching. So like starting out as a teacher isn't easy because you don't know what you're doing and like I know that you have a student teaching, but if you're mentoring them through it, then they'll be better than just if you know that they have a master's degree.
Definitely. So it's already difficult to become a teacher, but to help them learn throughout their career, that support is key. All right. Yeah.
For the third option, like making it so that like 10 years or just the performance of teachers. There's a lot of teachers that really don't like kids anymore, and they're really grumpy all the time, and they don't make it fun to learn. And then there's some that are like, when you go into the classroom, it's like you just have more fun and you learn better, and you have a better time of just learning and keep the information better. So I think that that's really important. This their performance should be rated.
Okay. So we've got to evaluate performance regardless of where someone is in their career, so that they can keep being an inspirational teacher that students can learn from.
Based on the last question on holding teachers accountable, I don't think that I think that the tenure system needs to be looked at because just out of personal experience, like the newer teachers, the younger teachers that come in like fresh out of college are more like inspired and more like excited about their job and tend to be better teachers because of that, whereas like older teachers tend to just go through the motions kind of and not take the time to really like do different things with it.
Okay.
And also like the linking it to teacher salary. I mean, teachers don't make that much to begin with, and I think that that's not a good idea because there's always some students who just don't apply themselves, even if the teacher's a good teacher.
Sure. Okay. So accountability for teachers of all levels is good, but perhaps linking pay to performance, in your opinion, seems unfair. Okay. Any other thoughts on any of these options related to?
I find that if, for the first option for teacher preparedness, that
Yeah.
you have better prepared teachers, then they can get the education that the students need across better if they have more training and they have more of an idea of how to do it.
Okay.
And again, more teacher preparation. It does kind of, makes them kind of be more all business than kind of more inspirational, kind of might be a little more, let's get this done instead of, let's do this, but not as much fun.
So it's great to have strong preparation for our teachers, but it's got to be not only content-based, but help students be passionate about that subject. They're able to make the information relevant to their students. Okay. Any other thoughts on having high-quality teachers and school leaders, on how you would do that? It sounded like all three of the options were pretty. The majority of the group was in favor of, making standards higher for teachers to enter, support, as well as accountability. So does anyone have anything they wanted to add before we move to our next topic?
Yeah. If teachers have to get more certifications in order to become a teacher, I think it would have to be considered at least would that affect their salary once they're in a profession, because I know doctors have to go to school for longer and lawyers and all those other professional careers, and if we make teaching more professional, that they have to go to school longer, would that have any effect on their earnings?
Sure. And what do you think? Do you think that we should make it a higher paid profession?
I think that'd be hard to do with public schools because we don't have the funding for it, and we're already struggling with teaching.
Sure.
And I think that along with that, the program standards of getting into the teaching program too, I think it needs to at least be looked at what level of teaching you want to teach at. Because if you have these really high standards of getting into the program and somebody just wants to teach elementary age or like smaller children rather than high school students or college or things like that, then you might be weeding out certain people that would be great inspirational teachers, but they don't feel that they need maybe that all of that, those standards to teach somebody third grade or something like that. So like the level of how much you want to teach should go with the level of what standards you need to meet.
Okay, so it could be different,
Right.
the level of certification based on what the level of, what it is that you want to
Yeah.
teach. Okay.